Imagine waking up one day and realizing that everything you chased for years did not give you the life you hoped for. You worked hard, you stayed busy, you followed advice, you improved your skills, yet something still feels off. Your success feels fragile, your relationships feel strained, your days feel reactive, not intentional. This quiet discomfort is where the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People begins. Stephen R. Covey does not start with productivity hacks or motivational slogans. He starts with a deeper question. Why do so many capable people struggle to live effective, meaningful lives despite having talent, intelligence, and ambition? Covey's answer is simple but uncomfortable. We are trying to fix our lives from the outside while ignoring what is broken on the inside. For much of modern history, self-improvement focused on what Covey calls character ethics. Ideas like integrity, humility, patience, courage, and responsibility. Over time, this shifted toward personality ethics, techniques, image management, communication tricks, and quick fixes. How to appear confident, how to influence others, how to get results faster. These methods can work in the short term, but they collapse under pressure. You can memorize scripts for leadership, but without trust, people will not follow you. You can master time management, but without clarity of purpose, you will stay busy and empty. You can polish your communication, but without empathy, relationships will remain shallow. Covey argues that effectiveness is not about doing more things right. It is about doing the right things for the right reasons from the right place within yourself. This book matters today more than ever. We live in a world obsessed with speed, faster growth, faster results, faster success. Social media compresses years of effort into highlight reels. Advice comes in 10-second clips. Everyone promises shortcuts. But human nature has not changed. We still struggle with the same inner conflicts. We still react instead of respond. We still sacrifice long-term meaning for short-term comfort. We still confuse motion with progress. The 7 Habits offers something rare, a principle-centered approach to life. Principles are not opinions or trends. They do not change with mood or culture. Things like responsibility, fairness, honesty, service, and growth. When your life aligns with these principles, effectiveness becomes sustainable. At its core, this book rests on a powerful idea. Change happens from the inside out. Before you improve your career, improve your character. Before you fix relationships, fix how you show up in them. Before you manage time, clarify values. The 7 habits are not isolated techniques. They form a progression. The first 3 habits focus on mastery of self. Covey calls this the private victory, learning to take responsibility for your life, designing it intentionally, acting on what truly matters. The next 3 habits focus on working with others, the public victory, building trust, communicating deeply, creating solutions that honor everyone involved. The final habit ties everything together, renewal, the idea that effectiveness is not a destination, it's a direction that requires constant care. Throughout this journey, Covey blends philosophy, psychology, leadership, and everyday life. You will hear about marriages under strain, businesses on the brink of collapse, parents trying to raise responsible children, individuals searching for meaning beyond success. This is not a book you read once and finish. It's a framework you return to as life changes. As we move through each chapter, do not listen as a student searching for tips. Listen as a human reflecting on how you live, where you react, where you avoid responsibility, where you compromise what matters most. Because the real promise of this book is not effectiveness in the narrow sense. It's something deeper, a life that feels aligned, a sense of inner stability in a chaotic world, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are building something that lasts. With that foundation in place, let us begin with the first and most important idea. Everything starts with how you see the world. Chapter 1. The Paradigm Shift. Before you change what you do, you must change how you see. That is the core idea of this chapter. Covey opens with a simple but unsettling insight. Most people believe their problems exist out there, in other people, in circumstances, in the system, in bad luck. But what if many of our problems do not start outside at all? What if they begin with the lens through which we interpret reality? A paradigm is that lens. It's not just an idea or an opinion, it's a mental map of how the world works. It shapes what you notice, what you ignore, how you explain events, how you justify actions. Two people can face the same situation and experience completely different realities because their paradigms are different. Covey compares maps to maps. If you're using the wrong map, effort will not help. You can walk faster, try harder, stay motivated, but you'll still end up in the wrong place. Imagine trying to navigate London with a map of Paris. No amount of positive thinking fixes that. You need the right map. In life, our maps are shaped by upbringing, culture, education, trauma, success, failure, and repeated stories we tell ourselves. Over time, these maps become invisible. We stop questioning them. We assume we see things as they are, not as we are. This is where effectiveness quietly breaks down. A manager believes people are lazy by nature. His paradigm leads to him control, monitor, and pressure. Employees respond with resistance and disengagement. The manager sees this as proof he was right. A parent believes strictness equals love. The child grows distant. The parent blames modern culture or attitude, never the belief driving the behavior. A person believes they are unlucky. Every setback confirms the story. Responsibility fades. Growth stalls. Covey makes a crucial distinction here between objective reality and subjective interpretation. You do not experience the world directly. You experience your interpretation of it. This is not philosophy for philosophers. It has practical consequences every day. How you see failure determines whether you learn or quit. How you see people determines whether you build trust or walls. How you see yourself determines whether you act with courage or fear. One of Covey's most powerful illustrations is deceptively simple. He describes showing people an image. At first glance, some see a young woman, others see an old woman. Both groups are right. Neither is lying. They are seeing the same image through different mental filters. Now imagine arguing about it. You insist it is a young woman, someone else insists it is an old woman. Voices rise. Ego steps in. No one pauses to ask a better question. What might the other person be seeing that I am not? This happens in families, workplaces, friendships, and politics every day. Covey argues that effectiveness requires humility at the level of perception, the willingness to admit, I may not be seeing the whole picture. This is uncomfortable. Your ego wants certainty. It wants to be right. But growth begins with the ability to question your own assumptions. Here is the deeper layer. Paradigms are not neutral. They produce behavior. Behavior produces results. If you want different results, you must examine the paradigm behind the behavior. Most people try to change behavior directly. They try to communicate better without addressing mistrust. They try to manage time without clarifying values. They try to motivate themselves without redefining purpose. This creates friction, short bursts of improvement followed by relapse. Covey introduces a radical shift. Effectiveness is not primarily about techniques. It is about alignment with principles. Principles are like natural laws. Gravity does not care about your opinion. If you ignore it, consequences follow. The same is true for principles like honesty, responsibility, fairness, and respect. When your paradigm aligns with these principles, behavior becomes more natural. You stop forcing change and start embodying it. This is why Covey insists on an inside-out approach. You do not fix relationships by changing others. You fix them by changing how you see and show up. You do not build trust by demanding it. You build it by becoming trustworthy. You do not gain influence by controlling outcomes. You gain it by aligning with principles people respect. This chapter quietly challenges a dangerous habit: blame. Blame feels safe, it protects identity, it avoids discomfort, but it also locks you into powerlessness. If the problem is always out there, then change is always out of your control. Paradigm shifts restore power. When you shift from blame to responsibility, options appear. When you shift from scarcity to abundance, collaboration replaces competition. When you shift from fear to growth, effort becomes meaningful. Covey does not promise instant clarity. Paradigm shifts are gradual, sometimes painful. They often require letting go of stories that once protected you. But without them, habits become shallow. This chapter sets the foundation for everything that follows. The 7 habits are not behaviors you paste onto your life. They emerge from deeper ways of seeing. Before you ask, "What should I do?" Covey invites a harder question. How am I seeing this situation right now? Key takeaway: lasting change begins with changing the lens through which you interpret life, not just the actions you take. In the next chapter, Covey takes this insight and applies it to personal responsibility. If perception shapes reality, then who is responsible for your response to life? That question leads us to the first habit: be proactive. Chapter 2. Habit 1. Be proactive. If you could reclaim control over one thing in your life, what would it be? Your time, your emotions, your reactions. Covey begins the first habit with a truth that sounds obvious but rarely gets lived. You are responsible for your life. Not your parents, not your boss, not the economy, not your past. You. Most people resist this idea at first. It feels heavy. It feels unfair. But Covey reframes responsibility in a liberating way. Responsibility is not blame. It is power. To be proactive means you choose your response, no matter the circumstance. This does not mean you control everything that happens. It means you control how you respond to what happens. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies your freedom. This idea comes from Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps. He observed that even in the most brutal conditions, people still had one freedom left: the freedom to choose their attitude. Covey builds habit 1 around this space. Reactive people live as if the space does not exist. They blame circumstances. They blame moods. They blame other people. If my boss were better, I would be motivated. If my parents were supportive, I would be confident. If the system were fair, I would succeed. Reactive language gives them away. That makes me so angry. I cannot do anything about it. That is just how I am. This language quietly hands over control. Proactive people speak differently. I choose how I respond. I can influence this. I will take responsibility. This shift may seem small. It is not. Language reflects belief. Belief shapes behavior. Covey uses a powerful concept to explain this difference: the circle of concern and the circle of influence. Your circle of concern includes everything you care about: politics, economy, other people's behavior, past mistakes, future uncertainty. Your circle of influence includes what you can actually do something about: your choices, your habits, your skills, your attitude, your effort. Reactive people focus most of their energy on the circle of concern. They complain, worry, argue, obsess. Their circle of influence shrinks because energy flows where attention goes. Proactive people focus on the circle of influence. They work on what they can affect. Their circle of influence grows. Opportunities expand. Trust increases. This is not motivational talk. It is observable. A proactive employee focuses on improving skills instead of blaming management. Over time, they become valuable. Influence grows. A proactive partner focuses on listening instead of criticizing. The relationship softens. Trust rebuilds. A proactive student focuses on daily effort instead of unfair grading. Competence compounds. Covey makes something very clear here. Proactivity is not about being aggressive or dominant. It's about alignment with values, not emotions. Reactive people let feelings dictate actions. Proactive people let values guide responses. You may feel angry, but you choose whether to speak with respect. You may feel afraid, but you choose whether to act with integrity. You may feel discouraged, but you choose whether to keep going. This does not mean suppressing emotion. It means not being ruled by it. One of the most practical applications of this habit shows up in relationships. Reactive behavior escalates conflict. You interrupt me, so I raise my voice. You criticize me, so I shut down. You ignore me, so I withdraw effort. This creates cycles. Proactive behavior interrupts cycles. You speak harshly, I choose calm. You blame, I choose clarity. You withdraw, I choose consistency. This is difficult. It requires emotional maturity, but it changes dynamics. Covey also addresses a subtle misunderstanding. Being proactive does not mean accepting abuse or injustice. It means choosing the most effective response. Sometimes the proactive response is setting boundaries. Sometimes it is leaving a harmful situation. Sometimes it is speaking firmly and clearly. The key is that the response comes from principle, not impulse. Another powerful idea in this chapter is the concept of commitment. Reactive people make promises based on mood. I will try. I hope. I will see how it goes. Proactive people make commitments based on values. I will do this. I take responsibility. I choose this path. When you commit from values, follow-through becomes easier. Your identity supports the action. Covey emphasizes that habit 1 is not about perfection. Everyone reacts sometimes. The habit is about awareness and correction. When you notice yourself blaming, pause. When you notice yourself feeling powerless, ask what you can influence. When you notice yourself reacting emotionally, reconnect with values. Small moments matter. This is where character is built. This habit also reshapes how you see failure. Reactive mindset says, "This happened to me." Proactive mindset says, "What can I learn from this?" One creates resentment, the other creates growth. Over time, proactivity builds something deeper than success. It builds self-trust. When you know you can choose your response, fear loses its grip. You stop waiting for permission. You stop outsourcing your life. You may still face limits. You may still face loss. You may still face unfairness, but you are no longer trapped inside them. Covey places this habit first for a reason. Without responsibility, the other habits collapse. You cannot design your life if you believe life designs you. You cannot prioritize if you believe you have no choice. You cannot build trust if you see yourself as a victim. Habit 1 restores agency. Key takeaway: you are not defined by what happens to you, but by how you choose to respond to it. In the next chapter, Covey takes this responsibility and asks a deeper question. If you are choosing your response, what are you actually building your life toward? That leads us to Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. Chapter 3, Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. If your life were a story, how would you want it to end? Not the dramatic details, the meaning, the legacy, the values people would remember when you are no longer in the room. Covey begins this chapter with a quiet but confronting exercise. Imagine attending your own funeral. You sit silently as 4 people speak: a family member, a close friend, a colleague, a community member. Each describes who you were and how you lived. What would you want them to say? This exercise is uncomfortable because it exposes a gap. The gap between how we live day to day and what we claim matters most. Habit 2 is about closing that gap. To begin with the end in mind means to live with a clear picture of where you are going, so your actions today move you in that direction. It is about designing your life before circumstances design it for you. Most people do the opposite. They drift into careers. They inherit values without questioning them. They react to demands instead of acting from purpose. Then, one day, they pause and wonder how they ended up here. Covey argues that everything in life is created twice, first in the mind, then in reality. A building exists as a blueprint before it exists as concrete and steel. If the blueprint is flawed, construction problems multiply. The same principle applies to your life. Your habits, schedules, and goals are the second creation. Your values, beliefs, and vision are the first. If you do not consciously design the first creation, you will live someone else's script, culture, family expectations, social pressure, fear. This is why clarity of purpose is not abstract, it is practical. Without a clear end in mind, decisions become reactive. You choose what feels urgent, popular, or safe. With a clear end in mind, decisions become aligned. You choose what serves your long-term values. Covey introduces one of the most important tools in the book, the personal mission statement. This is not a slogan. It is a personal constitution, a written expression of who you want to be, what you stand for, and what you aim to contribute. A mission statement answers questions most people avoid. What principles will guide my decisions? What kind of person do I choose to become? What roles matter most in my life? Notice the word choose. This is habit 1 carried forward. Responsibility now meets direction. Many people set goals without setting principles. Goals can change, principles should not. You might fail to reach a goal this year. That's normal. But if your actions align with principles like honesty, responsibility, and growth, you remain effective even in failure. Covey contrasts two centers people often build their lives around. Some center their lives on work. Success brings pride, failure brings collapse. Some center their lives on relationships. Approval becomes survival. Some center their lives on money. Security becomes conditional. Some center their lives on pleasure. Discomfort becomes unbearable. The problem is not ambition or enjoyment. The problem is fragility. When your center is external, your stability depends on things you cannot control. Covey proposes a different center, principle-centered living. When principles are the core, identity stabilizes, decisions simplify, self-respect grows. You still work hard, you still care about people, you still enjoy success, but these things no longer define your worth. This chapter also reveals a subtle psychological truth. Most inner conflict comes from misalignment.
You say family matters most, but work consumes your attention. You say health matters, but habits say otherwise. You say integrity matters, but convenience wins. This creates guilt, stress, and confusion. Habit 2 reduces this friction by forcing alignment between values and action. When your end is clear, trade-offs become easier. Saying no becomes an act of integrity, not deprivation. Covey gives a powerful example through leadership. A leader without a clear mission reacts to crises all day. A leader with a mission uses crises as filters. Does this matter? Does this align? Does this serve the end we are building toward? The same applies to personal life. When values are unclear, everything feels important. When values are clear, priorities emerge. This habit also reshapes how you think about success. Success without meaning feels empty. Meaning without direction feels scattered. Habit 2 integrates both. It asks you to define success on your own terms before the world defines it for you. This is not about predicting the future. It is about choosing a direction. Life will change, plans will shift, but a clear end gives you a compass when conditions are uncertain. Covey encourages revisiting this vision regularly. Reflection is not weakness, it is maintenance. When you drift, return to the end. When you face pressure, return to principles. When you feel lost, return to purpose. Over time, something powerful happens. Your identity becomes proactive. You stop asking, "What do people expect from me?" You start asking, "What do I expect from myself?" Habit 2 builds the framework for leadership, even if you never hold a title. Leadership begins with self-leadership. Key takeaway: when you define your values and vision first, your daily choices gain clarity, direction, and meaning. In the next chapter, Covey turns vision into action. Once you know where you are going, how do you organize your life to actually get there? That question leads us to Habit 3, put first things first. Chapter 4, Habit 3, put first things first. Knowing what matters is not enough. You must act on it. This is where many people fail. They have values, they have goals, they have good intentions, but their days tell a different story. Habit 3 is about execution. It is about turning vision into behavior. It is where discipline meets purpose. Covey calls this habit the personal management habit. If Habit 1 gives you control and Habit 2 gives you direction, Habit 3 gives you structure. It answers a simple but difficult question. Are you living your priorities, or are your priorities living you? Most people believe their problem is time, not enough hours, too many demands, endless interruptions. But Covey challenges this assumption. The real problem is not time management, it is priority management. You always find time for what truly matters to you. The issue is clarity and courage. To explain this, Covey introduces one of the most influential frameworks in the book, the time management matrix. He divides activities into 4 categories based on urgency and importance. Quadrant 1 includes things that are urgent and important: crises, deadlines, pressing problems. These demand immediate attention. Quadrant 2 includes things that are important but not urgent: planning, learning, building relationships, health, reflection, prevention. Quadrant 3 includes things that are urgent but not important: interruptions, some meetings, many messages, other people's priorities. Quadrant 4 includes neither urgent nor important: mindless distractions, escapism, time wasting. Most people live in Quadrant 1 and Quadrant 3. They spend their days reacting, putting out fires, responding to noise, confusing urgency with importance. This creates stress, burnout, and the illusion of productivity. Highly effective people live differently. They intentionally invest in Quadrant 2. This is where real growth happens. Exercise prevents health crises. Planning prevents chaos. Listening prevents conflict. Learning prevents stagnation. Quadrant 2 activities do not shout. They whisper. They require initiative. They require saying no to urgency in order to say yes to importance. This is hard because urgency feels productive. Importance often feels quiet. Covey makes a bold claim. The quality of your life is shaped by how you spend time in Quadrant 2. If you neglect it, Quadrant 1 explodes. If you invest in it, crises shrink. This habit requires more than awareness. It requires courage. Courage to say no to things that look productive but are not aligned. Courage to disappoint people in the short term, to honor values in the long term. Courage to protect time for what does not feel urgent but truly matters. Covey reframes discipline here. Discipline is not restriction, it is freedom. When you decide in advance what matters most, you free yourself from constant decision fatigue. You stop negotiating with distractions. Your calendar becomes a reflection of your values. This is where Habit 2 becomes practical. Your personal mission statement guides your weekly planning, not just tasks but roles: parent, partner, professional, individual, contributor. Instead of asking, "What do I need to do today?" you ask, "What matters most this week in each role?"
This shift changes everything. You plan from the inside out. You schedule priorities instead of prioritizing schedules. Covey criticizes traditional time management systems for focusing only on efficiency, doing more things faster. Habit 3 focuses on effectiveness, doing fewer things that matter more. This does not mean ignoring responsibility. It means placing responsibility in context. A phone call may be urgent, but does it align with your values? A meeting may be scheduled, but does it serve your mission? Habit 3 teaches you to pause before reacting. This habit also exposes a deeper issue: fear. Many people stay busy to avoid facing what truly matters: deep conversations, health changes, long-term planning, creative work. These require vulnerability and commitment. Urgency provides an escape. Covey challenges you to step out of that escape. Another powerful idea in this chapter is delegation, not the kind that dumps tasks on others, but what Covey calls stewardship delegation. This means delegating outcomes, not methods, trusting people, clarifying expectations, allowing autonomy. This builds capability and frees time for Quadrant 2 work. Micromanagement keeps you trapped in urgency. Trust creates leverage. Habit 3 is not about perfection. Some days will be chaotic, crises will still happen, but over time, your default mode shifts. You respond less, you choose more. You lead your life instead of chasing it. This habit also reshapes how you define success. Success becomes alignment, not applause. Progress becomes consistency, not intensity. When your daily actions reflect your deepest values, confidence grows quietly. You no longer need constant motivation. Your structure supports your intent. Covey emphasizes that habit 3 is where integrity is tested. Integrity means your actions match your values, especially when it is inconvenient. This habit asks you daily: will you protect what matters most, or will you surrender it to urgency? Key takeaway: effectiveness comes from consistently prioritizing what is important over what is urgent. With the private victory complete, Covey now shifts focus from self-mastery to relationships. In the next chapter, we move from independence to interdependence, from managing self to working with others. That journey begins with Habit 4, Think Win-Win. Chapter 5, Habit 4, Think Win-Win. Most conflicts are not about people. They're about frames. How you frame success determines how you treat others. Habit 4 begins with a simple question: when you win, does someone else have to lose? Many people live as if the answer is yes. There is limited success, limited respect, limited recognition. This is the scarcity mindset. It assumes life is a zero-sum game. If you get more, I get less. If I win, you must lose. Scarcity thinking shapes behavior in subtle ways. People hoard information. They compete instead of collaborate. They protect status instead of building trust. Even in relationships, scarcity shows up. If you are right, I must be wrong. If you are praised, I feel threatened. If you succeed, I feel diminished. Covey argues that this mindset quietly destroys effectiveness. It may produce short-term wins, but it damages relationships, trust, and long-term results. Think Win-Win offers a different frame. It says success is not either-or. It can be mutual. Win-win is not a tactic. It is a philosophy of human interaction. It assumes there is enough for everyone, enough respect, enough opportunity, enough value to create together. This does not mean being nice or avoiding conflict. It means seeking solutions that honor both sides. Covey outlines 6 possible paradigms in relationships: win-lose, I win by making you lose; lose-win, I give in to keep peace; lose-lose, if I cannot win, neither should you; win-win, we both benefit; win-win or no deal, if we cannot both win, we walk away. Highly effective people operate from win-win or no deal. They value both the relationship and the result. This is important. Win-win does not mean compromise where everyone feels slightly dissatisfied. It means creative problem solving that produces better outcomes than either side imagined alone. Covey introduces 3 character traits required for win-win: integrity, you stick to your values, you do not sell out for approval; maturity, you can express your needs while respecting others; and abundance mindset, you believe solutions exist beyond competition. Without integrity, win-win becomes manipulation. Without maturity, it becomes avoidance. Without abundance, it becomes impossible. One of the most powerful applications of this habit is in conflict. Most people enter conflict trying to win the argument. They listen to reply. They defend positions. They escalate. Win-win reframes the goal. The goal is not to defeat you. The goal is to solve the problem together. This changes tone. Language softens. Curiosity replaces accusation. Instead of saying, "You always do this," you say, "Here is what I need." Instead of saying, "You are wrong," you say, "Help me understand your perspective." Covey shares examples from business negotiations. Companies that pursued win-lose contracts gained short-term advantage but lost partnerships. Companies that pursued win-win built long-term loyalty and innovation. The same principle applies to personal life. A parent who demands obedience may win control but lose connection. A partner who avoids conflict may keep peace but lose respect. Win-win seeks both. This habit also challenges people-pleasing. Lose-win looks kind on the surface, but it creates resentment underneath. Over time, self-respect erodes. Trust weakens because boundaries are unclear. Win-win requires courage. You must be willing to state your needs clearly. You must also be willing to hear no. This is why Covey includes no deal. Walking away can be the most respectful option when values or goals do not align. Win-win is not about forcing agreement. It is about honoring principles. Another key idea in this chapter is emotional bank accounts. Every relationship has an account balance. Deposits come from trust, kindness, honesty, and keeping commitments. Withdrawals come from disrespect, dishonesty, and broken promises. Win-win thinking keeps the account healthy. Win-lose drains it quickly. When the balance is high, mistakes are forgiven. When it is low, even small issues feel threatening. Habit 4 invites you to think long-term. How will this decision affect trust? How will it affect future cooperation? How will it affect how people feel working with me? This habit is especially powerful in leadership. Win-win leaders do not motivate through fear. They align goals. They create shared success. They make people feel valued, not used. This does not mean avoiding accountability. It means framing accountability as shared responsibility. Think win-win also reshapes how you see competition. Competition can sharpen skills, but cooperation multiplies value. When people feel safe to share ideas, creativity expands. When people feel threatened, they hide. Covey emphasizes that win-win begins inside. If you do not believe in your own worth, you will struggle to seek mutual benefit. You will either dominate or submit. Habit 4 rests on the foundation of the private victory. Self-respect makes mutual respect possible. Key takeaway: lasting success comes from seeking solutions that honor both your needs and the needs of others. In the next chapter, Covey goes deeper into communication. If win-win defines the goal, how do you actually connect with people deeply enough to achieve it? That leads us to Habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Chapter 6. Habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Most people do not listen. They wait. They wait to interrupt. They wait to defend. They wait to reply. Habit 5 challenges this pattern at its root. If you want influence, start with understanding, not agreement. Understanding. Covey calls this the highest form of communication skill, empathetic listening. This is not listening to gather facts. It is listening to understand meaning and emotion, what the other person feels, what they fear, what they value. Why does this matter so much? Because people do not open up to those who do not understand them. They resist advice. They resist persuasion. They resist direction. Understanding creates psychological safety. Covey introduces the idea of psychological air. Just as the body needs oxygen, the mind needs to feel heard. When people lack this air, they become defensive, emotional, and irrational. Give someone psychological air and tension drops. Most conflicts escalate because both sides are trying to be understood first. I need to explain my side. I need to correct you. I need to prove my point. This creates a deadlock. Habit 5 flips the sequence. First understand, then be understood. This order is not polite, it is strategic. When people feel deeply understood, they become open to influence. They lower defenses. They listen back. Covey outlines common listening levels. Ignoring, you are physically present but mentally elsewhere. Pretending, you nod but do not engage. Selective listening, you hear parts that support your view. Attentive listening, you hear words but miss emotion. Empathic listening, you listen with the intent to understand. Most people rarely reach the last level. Empathic listening requires restraint. You resist the urge to fix. You resist the urge to judge. You resist the urge to compare with your own experience. Instead, you reflect back. So, what you are feeling is frustration because expectations were unclear. It sounds like you feel overlooked despite your effort. This does not mean you agree. It means you understand. Understanding is not surrender. It is clarity. Covey shares an example of a father struggling with his son. The father tried logic, discipline, and lectures. Nothing worked. Only when he truly listened did he realize his son felt invisible. Behavior changed after understanding arrived. This pattern repeats everywhere. Employees labeled unmotivated often feel unheard. Partners labeled difficult often feel misunderstood. Teenagers labeled rebellious often feel dismissed. Listening does not excuse behavior, it reveals causes. Another critical idea in this chapter is diagnosis before prescription. You would not take medicine without knowing the illness, yet in communication, people prescribe solutions before understanding problems. Advice given too early feels like rejection. Correction without understanding feels like disrespect. Habit 5 slows the process. You ask before you answer. You clarify before you advise. You listen before you lead. This habit also strengthens credibility. When people feel understood by you, they trust your judgment more. Your words carry weight. Influence becomes natural. Covey emphasizes that empathic listening is a skill. It requires practice. It feels awkward at first. Silence feels uncomfortable, but silence creates space. This habit transforms leadership. Leaders who listen uncover better ideas. They detect issues early. They build loyalty. It also transforms relationships. Arguments turn into conversations. Defensiveness turns into curiosity. Distance turns into connection. Covey makes an important distinction here. Seek first to understand does not mean never speaking up. It means earning the right to be understood. Once you understand deeply, you can express your view clearly and respectfully. The other person is now listening too. This creates dialogue instead of debate. Habit 5 demands humility. You must accept that your perspective is incomplete, that others see parts of reality you do not. This humility is strength. When people feel heard, they cooperate. When they feel dismissed, they resist. Over time, empathic listening builds trust faster than any technique. Key takeaway: deep understanding creates influence, trust, and connection before words ever try to persuade. With mutual understanding in place, Covey moves to something even more powerful. What happens when differences do not divide but create something better? That leads us to Habit 6, Synergize. Chapter 7, Habit 6, Synergize. Most people fear differences. Different opinions feel threatening. Different styles feel inefficient. Different values feel dangerous. Habit 6 turns this fear upside down. It argues that differences are not obstacles, they are assets. Synergy means the whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts, not through compromise, but through creative cooperation. Covey begins this chapter with a key insight. When people truly trust each other, they stop defending positions and start exploring possibilities. Synergy does not happen without trust, and trust does not happen without the previous habits. Without responsibility, people blame. Without purpose, people pull in different directions. Without priority, people stay reactive. Without win-win, people compete. Without understanding, people talk past each other. Synergy is the result of everything that came before it. At its core, synergy is about valuing differences instead of tolerating them. Most teams tolerate differences at best. They try to minimize conflict by forcing agreement. This leads to average results. Synergistic teams do something different. They invite differences. They explore tension. They remain curious instead of defensive. Covey explains that when people bring different experiences, skills, and perspectives, they see more of reality together than alone.
One person sees risks, another sees opportunities. One thinks long-term, another focuses on execution. When these perspectives clash without trust, conflict erupts. When they combine with trust, innovation emerges. Covey uses a powerful metaphor. If two people have different maps of the same territory, combining maps gives a clearer picture. Arguing over which map is correct does not. Synergy requires humility. You must accept that your way is not the only way. It also requires confidence. You must be willing to contribute your perspective fully. This balance is rare. Weak ego submits. Strong ego dominates. Healthy ego collaborates. One of the biggest barriers to synergy is the need to be right. Being right feels safe, but it limits learning. Synergy requires you to risk being wrong in order to discover something better. This habit shows up clearly in problem solving. Non-synergistic approach sounds like this. Here is my solution. Here is why your idea will not work. Synergistic approach sounds different. Here is how I see it. Here is how you see it. What could we create together that is better than both? This third option is the heart of synergy. It is not your idea, it is not my idea, it is a new idea. Covey emphasizes that synergy cannot be forced. It emerges from openness, respect, and shared purpose. You cannot fake it with brainstorming sessions. You cannot demand it through authority. You create conditions, then you step back. This habit also changes how you see conflict. Conflict is not a sign of failure, it is a sign of difference. Difference handled poorly creates division. Difference handled well creates strength. Covey shares examples from families, organizations, and communities where people stopped trying to win arguments and started trying to understand systems. Solutions improved because perspectives expanded. Synergy also requires patience. It takes time to listen deeply. It takes time to build trust. It takes time to explore alternatives. Urgency kills synergy. Fear kills synergy. Ego kills synergy. But when synergy happens, outcomes exceed expectations. Teams solve problems faster. Relationships deepen. Decisions gain durability. People leave feeling respected, not defeated. Another important point Covey makes is that synergy does not mean uniformity. It means unity without sameness. You do not need everyone to think alike. You need everyone aligned around principles and purpose. This is especially relevant in leadership. Strong leaders do not surround themselves with clones. They surround themselves with thinkers who challenge them respectfully. Synergy turns diversity into advantage. This habit also applies internally. You have different roles and desires inside you. Career goals, family roles, personal needs. When these compete without clarity, stress grows. When they align around values, life feels integrated. Synergy inside creates synergy outside. Covey places this habit after communication for a reason. You cannot create synergy with people you do not understand. You cannot sustain it without win-win. You cannot lead it without integrity. Habit 6 is where collaboration becomes creative instead of political. Key takeaway: when trust and understanding guide collaboration, differences become a source of innovation instead of conflict.
With synergy established, Covey moves to the habit that sustains everything. Effectiveness fades without renewal. That leads us to the final habit, Habit 7, sharpen the saw.
Chapter 8, Habit 7, Sharpen the Saw. Effectiveness is not something you achieve once, it is something you maintain. Habit 7 is about renewal. It is about preserving and expanding your greatest asset, yourself. Covey uses a simple image. A man is sawing down a tree. He works non-stop. Someone suggests sharpening the saw. The man replies, he is too busy sawing. This is how many people live. They push harder instead of wiser. They sacrifice health for productivity. They trade reflection for urgency. Eventually, performance declines, burnout appears, meaning fades. Sharpen the saw means renewing yourself in 4 core dimensions: physical, mental, emotional and social, spiritual. Neglect one and effectiveness suffers. Physical renewal is the most obvious and most ignored: sleep, exercise, nutrition, rest. Covey does not frame this as self-care. He frames it as responsibility. A tired body produces weak discipline. A neglected body limits focus. Taking care of your physical health increases energy, patience, and resilience. It expands your capacity to act on your values. Mental renewal involves learning and reflection: reading, writing, thinking, planning. Without mental renewal, thinking becomes shallow. You react instead of reason. You repeat patterns instead of improving them. Covey encourages daily learning, not for credentials, but for clarity. A mind that keeps learning stays flexible. A mind that stops learning becomes defensive. Emotional and social renewal focuses on relationships. This includes empathy, service, trust, and contribution. Humans are wired for connection. When relationships weaken, motivation weakens, cynicism grows, isolation increases. Covey emphasizes service here. Helping others without expectations strengthens emotional health. It reminds you that your life has impact beyond self-interest. Spiritual renewal is about meaning. This does not require religion. It requires connection to values, purpose, and principles. Reflection, nature, meditation, prayer, silence. Spiritual renewal answers one question: why does this matter? Without it, success feels empty. With it, effort feels meaningful. Covey stresses balance. These dimensions are connected. Neglect your body, and your mind suffers. Neglect meaning, and relationships feel hollow. Sharpening the saw is not an escape from responsibility. It is preparation for it. Many people feel guilty resting. Covey reframes rest as investment. You sharpen the saw to cut better tomorrow. This habit also protects against burnout. Burnout is not caused by too much work. It is caused by working without renewal or meaning. Habit 7 makes effectiveness sustainable. Key takeaway: renewal across body, mind, relationships, and purpose is not optional. It is the foundation of long-term effectiveness. With all 7 habits explored, Covey closes the book by returning to the core idea: effectiveness always flows from the inside out. If you are ready, say continue. I will deliver the final conclusion. Conclusion: a principle-centered life. When you step back and look at the 7 habits as a whole, a pattern becomes clear. This book is not about habits. It is about identity. It is about who you become before what you achieve. Covey never promises an easier life. He promises a more grounded one, a life where success does not collapse under pressure, a life where relationships do not erode when things get hard, a life where progress feels intentional, not accidental. The journey of the 7 habits follows a human arc, from reaction to responsibility, from drifting to direction, from busyness to meaning, from competition to cooperation, from exhaustion to renewal. The private victory teaches you to lead yourself. The public victory teaches you to work with others. Sharpen the saw teaches you to sustain both. At the heart of the book is a simple truth: you cannot build an effective life on borrowed values. When your choices align with principles, consistency replaces chaos. You stop chasing approval. You stop reacting to every demand. You start living from the inside out.
This is why the book has endured for decades. Trends change, tools evolve, human nature does not. People still struggle with responsibility. They still struggle with priorities. They still struggle with relationships. They still struggle with meaning. The 7 Habits does not offer escape. It offers structure. Here are 5 practical principles to carry forward. First, take responsibility without waiting for permission. You may not control circumstances, but you always control your response. Power begins there. Second, decide what success means before life decides for you. Write it, clarify it, return to it. Direction reduces regret. Third, protect what matters most before urgency steals it. Your calendar reveals your values. Use it deliberately. Fourth, build relationships on trust, not tactics. Listen to understand. Seek mutual benefit. Cooperation compounds. Fifth, renew yourself consistently. Energy, learning, connection, and meaning sustain effectiveness. Covey never suggests mastering all 7 habits at once. This is not a checklist. It is a practice. Some seasons demand responsibility. Some demand renewal. Some demand better listening. Effectiveness is not a destination. It is a direction you choose again and again. Perhaps the most powerful shift this book offers is this. You stop asking, how do I get more from life? You start asking, who am I becoming through how I live? That question changes everything. Because in the end, effectiveness is not measured by speed or status. It is measured by alignment between values and actions, between effort and meaning, between who you are and how you show up. And the quiet reward of that alignment is something no shortcut can give. A life that feels whole.